Hello, another beautiful sunny day. Definitely warm weather here, and time I think for a haircut. I think I'm getting a little shaggy. Um, Happy Mother's Day, all of you folks out there. Everyone's got a mom. So happy Mother's Day. Some of you are moms. Some of you, right? So happy Mother's Day, everyone. I'm going to continue with the de Kooning, and this is part 2. I think I told you about the catalog. Okay, so here we are. You are with a group or movement, he, de Kooning, said in 1949, because you cannot help it. The group or movement he was with was one of those that have in common a certain stance, not a certain style. It was not a movement like Impressionism or Fauvism or Cubism or Futurism, where a work by one of its leading members can easily be thought to be by another. Abstract Expressionism was a movement in the same sense as the Blue Rider or Dada or Surrealism. Even the artistic personality of Pollock, superficially de Kooning's nearest neighbor, stylistically among the founding members, is as different from de Kooning's as, say, basketball, with its continuous movement flowing all over the court, is from gridiron football, with its convulsive, interrupted action. Or we might say that one is like pasta, the other like pizza. A Pollock presents an intricate entanglement of long strands in the interstices of which we can discern a sauce, so to speak, and various fragments of flora and fauna. A de Kooning presents a melted mix in which some of the widely contrasting ingredients remain distinguishable, while others have been smeared out of recognition. And it has a sort of outline, usually, nothing so clear as that of a disc or a slice, but still a shape containing the composition as against the indeterminate edges of a Pollock composition. Whatever the energizing effect of de Kooning's whiplash line, his primary ingredient is the paint. I get the paint right on the surface, he'd say to his friend Emily Kilgore. Nobody else can do that. The paint occupies that surface like a living and life-generating and decomposing substance within which there abound forms, some of which are recognizable. Most are ambiguous, and some are unidentifiable. Confronted with a work in the surrealist tradition that is full of ambiguous references, and this, of course, can mean a work by Gorky, de Kooning's mentor, as well as by Miro or Masson, the spectator separates and savors the elements in the metaphoric image one by one. But the impact of a de Kooning lies in a more direct and physical response to the paint itself, so that the sense of external reality this conveys, say, of the immediate enveloping presence of pink flesh, quote, flesh was the reason why oil painting was invented, that's a de Kooning quote, or the insidious ubiquity of mouths with menacing teeth, is not so much a consecutive recognition of the elements in the flotsam and jetsam of perception as a general awareness of reality, as an all-absorbing Heraclitean flux, Heraclitus, Heraclitean flux. What typically happens is something like what Braque describes as happening in paintings of his own. Given how deeply de Kooning's art is rooted in Cubism, it was not by chance that the speaker was one of the founders of Cubism. Nor was it by chance that Braque was talking primarily about his current work in the 1950s, not far from the time of de Kooning's black and white paintings. No object can be tied down. This is a quote from Bruck. No object can be tied down to any one sort of reality. A stone may be part of a wall, a piece of sculpture, a lethal weapon, a pebble on a beach, or anything else you like, just as this file in my hand can be metamorphosed into a shoehorn or a spoon, according to the way in which I use it. So when you ask me whether a particular form in one of my paintings depicts a woman's head, a fish, a vase, a bird, or all four at once, I can't give you a categorical answer, for this metaphoric confusion is fundamental to what I am out to express. And then I occasionally introduce forms which have no literal meaning whatsoever. Sometimes these are accidents which happen to suit my purpose, sometimes rhymes which echo other forms, and sometimes rhythmical motifs which help to integrate a composition and give it movement. Objects don't exist for me, except insofar as a rapport exists between them or between them and myself. Differences are that the pace of the flux in Braque tends to range from adagio to andante, in de Kooning from allegretto to presto, and that the things in Braque's flux tend to be things that can be held in the hand, seen indoors or taken indoors, whereas the imagery in de Kooning's flux is wider, more elemental, wilder. All right. I'll stop there. Well, it'd be nice to get some. He goes into. All right, I'll read a little more. De Kooning hated modernist movements for being reductive, for being categorical about what artists must not do, for being dictatorial as to what they had to eliminate. Of all movements, I like Cubism most. It had that wonderful, unsure atmosphere of reflection, a poetic frame where something could be possible, where an artist could practice his intuition. It didn't want to get rid of what went before. Instead, it added something to it. The parts that I can appreciate in other movements came out of Cubism. Cubism became a movement. It didn't set out to be one. The relationship to Cubism of de Kooning's own work lies in the very general indebtedness manifest, say, in how the black paintings of the late 1940s, notably the one in the Museum of Modern Art, uses the Cubist lingua franca of planes cut out into irregular shapes and put together in a low relief-like space. Maybe I'll put that in the email. Beyond that, de Kooning's work was quite specifically influenced at one time or another by each of Cubism's main aspects. Analytical Cubism, the synthetic Cubism of the Papier-Collé of 1912-1914, and the kind of synthetic Cubism making great play with biomorphic forms that Picasso invented in 1914 at Avignon, and later developed between the middle 1920s and the late 1930s, which is a sort of Cubo-surrealism. The last of them was the first to affect de Kooning's style. There are intimations of its influence in some of the compositions of 1942, though in these it seems filtered through Gorky. Where it really takes hold is in a work that was probably the single most decisive turning point in a career unusually full of twists and turns, Pink Angels of circa 1945. We'll put both of those in. This was obviously inspired by Picasso's of the late 1920s. All right, I'll pause. I'm going to pause. put those in. We'll pick up with Pink Angels next time. Okay, hope you're all well. Making stuff. Keeping it going. All right, take care. Be well. Bye-bye.